Well, the number of police-reported hate crimes has risen in Canada for the sixth straight year. According to new data from StatsCan, nearly 5,000 hate crimes were reported in 2024. Even though that was just a 1% increase from 2023, it is part of a broader and more troubling surge since 2018. Now, for more on what those numbers mean, we're joined by Angie Osachoff. She's Director of Canadian Programs at Equitas. That's the International Center for Human Rights Education, and she's with us in studio this morning. Good morning to you, Angie.
Morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me in.
Thank you for being here. First off, just by way of definition, when we call something a hate crime, what are we talking about specifically? What's the criteria for something to be called a hate crime?
Yeah, hate crimes are quite specific. They're targeted incidents where someone's visible part of their identity is attacked. It can be something that is related to their race, the color, their nationality. It can also be something that we can't see, like their ethnicity, their religion, language. And a hate crime can be something that either happens to a person individually or to something larger like an institution such as a synagogue or a mosque. There is a difference between what qualifies as a hate crime according to criminal law and where things can be processed, but there's also incidences of racism that are deeply affecting and that deeply impact people's everyday lives that we aren't even capturing in reported data right now.
Yeah, and not to diminish the severity of this, but if somebody gets assaulted, for instance, and in the course of being assaulted, they get called a racial slur, does that automatically make it a hate crime, or does their race have to be the motivating cause of the incident?
Oh, that's a tricky one, and I'm not with the police, and so I can't actually quite give you the specificities. But what I can say is the bar to meet a hate crime is quite high, and it has to be done with intentionality around the hatred. Versus, if someone is being attacked and a racial slur is used, that could be qualified more as a racial incident.
Of course, I guess you never really know because you can't get into the mind of the attacker.
Exactly.
And so, can these numbers and this increase in numbers that we've seen since 2018, how much of that has to do with more awareness of hate crimes, that maybe people are now reporting them as hate crimes because we're able to recognize them as such, where perhaps people didn't before?
I mean, that can definitely play a factor in it. We also, as an education organization, we really believe in the importance of education. If you know what your rights are, you can advocate for your rights and you can advocate when they're being violated. But data also shows that, reported statistics are just lower than lived experiences. And I think the data says in the case of hate crimes in particular, about only 1 in 5 of them are being reported.
Right.
So I think, part of it is access to knowledge, understanding. Things are being reported more and more. We have greater access to information in media. Yeah. But still, it's only 1 in 5 hate crimes are actually being reported to police.
Yeah, and that doesn't, include a lot of the sort of, casual racism or casual homophobia that you see and hear all around you all the time.
That's exactly it. I mean, I can say personally, as someone who works in human rights, works in hatred and anti-racism and discrimination, just a few months ago, I was riding the bus and a racial slur was thrown at me and I was taken aback. I was standing there as someone who does this as part of my life and kind of went, oh, did that actually just happen? And I chose not to do anything about it. I used my agency. But if I'm not reporting, and this is where I work, imagine how many other people are facing it in far more serious incidences and don't have the knowledge, ability, even the education to know what happened to them was wrong and that they should report it.
And why don't people report more?
I think it's access. I think it's really, really hard to file a hate crime report. There's shock, like me. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. Some people feel shame about what happened. They internalize it. We know the deep impacts of racism and hatred on young people, on adults, the bullying, the exclusion, the impact on self-esteem. And so I think there's a number of factors. And I think particularly if you look at people who are newcomers to Canada, it's so much harder when you're a newcomer, when you don't understand the system, when you're here because of challenging circumstances you may have faced to come here. I think the barriers are just so significant.
And I guess the unfortunate part of it is, too, that for some people, I mean, they may have heard it over and over again, and they just become, not used to it. But, what's the point, I guess, in reporting it?
Yeah, that can be part of it,
Fatigue, basically, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, this happens to me all the time. What am I going to do about it? Nothing happens when I report it. But I can also say, with the rise, we're seeing a significant impact in the rise of of hatred and racism amongst children and youth. And at Equitas, we're getting an unprecedented number of calls from teachers and frontline child and youth workers saying there's a problem in the classroom, on the playground, the children are being anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, anti-Palestinian, homophobic, and they're calling us with pleading for help. Their intention is to address it. They know that when young people are children, these are their formative years. This is the time to address it, and they're afraid to. They don't know how to. They're afraid of doing it wrong. They lack. They have uncertainty, they lack confidence, and they're looking for support. And that's, where an organization like Equitas steps in. We had this unprecedented number of calls, come fix this for us. And we can't fix it. It's not a one-time act that can change it. It's something that has to permeate our communities, our culture, and where teachers, educators, frontline workers need to feel confidence. And so we took it upon ourselves and developed a new tool called Let's Talk About It, which is a guide to facilitating difficult conversations with children and youth. And we're seeing, impacts from that tool. I had a youth worker from just down the street here in Vancouver take the training. We accompanied her as she started to implement it and coached her. And she said to me, she was afraid to have these conversations. She didn't know how to do it. She was afraid of addressing something so intense and using her voice. She's a racialized woman. She thought it was, maybe her own assumptions. And she said that once she had the tool and the support and the resources, she had the backing and the confidence to address it because it gave her the language and a framework to use. And I think, as we see this rise, we also need to start equipping people who are working in community every day with tools and resources on how they can address it effectively.
What are the theories on why this is increasing in young people? I mean, we think of the state of political discourse right now. The state of public discourse is terrible. You have the president of the United States openly using, curse words in speeches and calling people names constantly. Is that, do people see that as sort of tacit permission to do the same?
For sure. I mean, and we can see it, in the way Canadians feel about our community. Only 44% of Canadians trust government leaders. The trust in neighbors is declining. People think that government leaders are intentionally trying to mislead them. So I think there's this overall political environment of lack of trust, of a breakdown in democracy that is happening around us. Kids pick it up. They're listening to the news. They're on social media. They're hearing it. Additionally, they're seeing what's happening around the world. And in a community like Vancouver that's so diverse, all of the hatred, all of the conflict around the world comes home and it has an effect.
Is there enough recognition of this as the problem that it is, either from federal leaders, provincial leaders, even municipal leaders?
I mean, everyone is doing their best to take action. I think there can always be more things that are done. The federal government has a plan to combat hate. Provincial and municipal governments have plans and programs to address hatred and racism. The City of Vancouver has its Healthy Communities strategy that speaks about, creating diverse communities. But we still face these challenges. I don't think we can deny, as you said at the start, the numbers continue to go up, and so we can't deny it. And I think more needs to be done. We have community organizations like us. We have schools. We have frontline programs, YMCAs, that are all playing a vital role to address these issues in community. But their efforts need greater support. They need investment by our federal leaders. They need policy change, and we need a commitment from a society as a whole. I think everyone has to step up and learn about their rights, learn about how these incidences are unacceptable, and make a commitment that we're gonna change.
Angie, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Thanks for taking the time. Angie Osachoff, Director of Canadian Programs at Equitas. That is the International Centre for Human Rights Education.